Yeah, that's right, fuckers. I'm here with the Halloween special, baby! Now, you might be asking yourself, is this a video that you've been working on for 4 months and then put off until suddenly it's October 30th and you have nothing better to do because your car is broken for the 5th time, so you think, hey, let's go finish that video you haven't worked on in months? No! I'm here to warn you guys about an epidemic that is sweeping our nation right now. I am so fucking sick of cars. People are driving in them, getting in accidents, doing drugs in them. And this isn't just a small scale problem. I did my fucking research. Look at all these fucking sinners. So that's why I'm here today to talk to you about all the dangers that cars can cause. Huh. Alright, no, yeah, this works. Okay, but in reality, I'm just gonna talk about every Mario Kart roster, so let's just do that video instead. Super Mario Kart. For the Mario games that were out at the time, this roster makes sense. The only major games that were out before 1992 were the original trilogy, Super Mario World, the Donkey Kong arcade game, and... Alright, let's address the monkey in the room. Super Mario Kart featured Donkey Kong Jr. for the first and last time. It would still be a few years until the world was graced with Diddy Kong, rendering Jr. completely useless. There's nothing wrong with this group of racers. Everyone here, save for the tumor, eventually became series staples. You got both Mario Bros, Princess Peach, Bowser, Toad, Yoshi, and a random-ass Koopa. Look, it was either Koopa or the Cloud. I can see why they made the inferior choice. The changes here I would make are replacing Jr. with Donkey Kong himself. I get that it was a celebration of Donkey Kong Jr.'s 10-year anniversary, but who really cares? We're also going to be rearranging the character select screens. And Jesus Christ, this game needs work! There is no way you can look at this to make it concise. If you look at it from left to right, you get Mario and Bowser, but then you also get their bitches right next to them. Then if you go on the bottom row, it's just a row of rejects and a super special mistake. So here's how I'd clean it up. Move Peach one to the left and put Luigi in her place. Then next to her, replace Bowser with Toad. Then on the bottom row, you make it Bowser, Koopa, DK, then Yoshi. It isn't perfect per se, but it's a hell of a lot better than the previous smorgasbord we had. Even though the Super Mario Kart roster might be one of the least influential in the series, it did set a precedent for what the series was aiming for. A diverse, colorful cast of characters and a colorful, wacky setting. This formula was so good, they decided to keep it almost the exact same for the next game. And this was a whole console generation later. What was so successful about the first one that made it work for the second? Well, we're gonna have to look at Mario Kart 64 if we want the answers for that. It is my favorite Mario Kart game that ends with the letter 4. While this game took many leaps forward in track design, visuals, music, and overall gameplay tweaks, the roster is what seemed to get the least amount of attention. I mean, sure, we finally got our father back, but some weird changes were made. Donkey Kong Jr. was replaced with Wario, thank fucking Christ. Then, in early betas of the game, Magic Koopa was actually shown to be a racer. This was done to show representation to Yoshi's Island, a game that had come out a few years earlier and had already found some success. But ultimately, I feel like they made the right decision by replacing them with Donkey Kong. He's just a lot more notable of a villain in the Mario Kart franchise. Maybe you'll get your chance another day. I don't think any of these changes were bad. I think my main problem stems from the fact that the series still only had 8 racers in their catalog. I'm not a game developer, and I'm certainly not one from 1996, but these games were released 4 years apart. They really couldn't find a way to throw in a few more racers? I mean, hell, even Diddy Kong Racing was able to have 10 racers, and that campaign had a full story mode, and had to program multiple means of racing. I'm not saying it would have been easy, but I'm just saying it really could have been done. The way I'd fix my problems with the game is by actually just bumping the roster up to 10 and putting in Koopa and Magic Koopa. That way it splits the roster down the middle with half heroes, half villains. I mean, Magic Koopa was already finished for the game, so I can't imagine it would be that hard to implement. Then as for Koopa, it's not the most creative solution to the problem, but it would secure that all of the valid racers from the first game made it over to the second. You could also make them as unlockable characters just to give players something to work towards, since there's not really a lot to do in the main game besides just load in some races. As for the character select screen, all you'd have to do is move Yoshi to the top row and lay out the rest of the villains under the corresponding heroes. Of course, you'd put Mario and Bowser next to each other, and then you'd have Luigi and Wario, as an omen of things to come. Then you'd put Donkey Kong under Peach, just kind of as a neat nod to the arcade games, similar to what we did with Donkey Kong Jr. Then we put Yoshi and Magic Koopa as the previously mentioned Yoshi's Island representation, and then it's just Koopa and Toad. the local residents of each kingdom.
Might be thinking to yourself at this point, I'm so fucking lonely.
Jumping forward a whole console generation, Mario Kart Double Dash. If you're curious why I expected more from Mario Kart 64, Double Dash is why. They went from an 8-racer roster to 20. That's insane. So many great inclusions. Waluigi, Daisy, Bowser Jr., not Donkey Kong Jr. This game really took the Mario Kart formula and flipped it on its head. No, that's not what I meant. No! The third installment of the Mario Kart franchise brought with it a new mechanic of having 2 racers in one kart at the same time. This was, and still is, an awesome idea. Being able to mix and match your racers with some bizarre combos such as the Cheeto Dusters, Brussels Sprouts, and... in combination with all the character unique items that were added, Double Dash gave the player more incentive to play all the racers than any other game in the franchise. Which is why they felt the need to dial the roster up to 11. Jesus! Now, as much as we'd love to see the roster look a little something like this, let's play this fair. This roster is nearly perfect! So many series staples got added in this game, and they really felt like they were utilizing their line of characters. On top of now iconic Mario characters like Bowser Jr. and Birdo, they gave us Petey Piranha and King Boo. These were such a cool unlockable back in the day. And they were perfectly representing the first 2 major Mario games that came out on the GameCube. There's very little that needs to be changed about this lineup, but I'm gonna try. For starters, it's a real nitpick, but I'm gonna swap the locations of the Toads and the babies to try to get it to line up as close as I can with the Mario Bros. 2 callback. But while we're here, let's take a minute to talk about the babies. Despite what you might think, these are actually racers I don't really have any gripes with. It might be my nostalgia for Double Dash, but I actually really enjoyed having them around. I felt like it broadened the variety of character types that were offered in the game. Plus, it was the first proper extension of representation for the Yoshi series that we had. Though I do admit these are technically duplicates of Mario and Luigi, and I think I'd prefer if they were replaced with other characters. After some careful consideration, I think it would be the most interesting if they were actually replaced with Dr. Egad and a ghost from Luigi's Mansion. Not only would they both fit perfectly in the lightweight category, but I think it would be cool if their unique item was Flood from Mario Sunshine. If the player holds up on the analog stick, it could be used to briefly float in the air for a short amount of time to leap over pits or obstacles in its path. And if they held the stick back, it would function as a weaker mushroom, and maybe it would even shoot out a gust of water behind it to hit some of the racers. Plus, their unique cart could be a really cool floating gravestone, or maybe something similar to Luigi's Poltergust from Mario Kart DS. I honestly am not too crazy attached to this idea. I think the babies are fine as they are, especially since it's only 2 of them. If it were something crazy like, I don't know, 5, that would be crossing the line. What?
God, I can't fucking breathe.
Mario Kart Super Circuit was the first portable game in the franchise. I'll go easy on it since it's some weaker hardware, but surely they could have found a way to add 1 or 2 new racers, right? I mean, a 10-character roster was something Diddy Kong Racing found out 4 years prior. Surely they could have figured it out by now, right? So why don't we drift on into the character select screen and... it's just Mario Kart 64's racers. With a random select block? Alright, no, you know what? Let's make this quick. Get rid of the random select block and throw in Richard Gottfried or something. It is the hardest game in the series to play multiplayer. And this is the one you're giving us a random select button on? No! It's a lazy-ass way for them to cover up that they made an 8-character roster instead of 10. Hell, I would have accepted 9. That way they could have at least done 3 rows of 3, but not this weird-ass spiral around the center of the universe bullshit. I know the real reason they did this is because they were doing the same technique they did with Donkey Kong Country, where they just made 2D sprites out of 3D images. But you're telling me they couldn't do that again for 2 more racers? Would it have been that big of a deal? Hell, you know what? Like, fine, don't do that. I get it. It's a lot of fucking production for the first handheld game that no one knew if it was gonna work or not. But at least finish the homage and do 2 rows of 4. If you're going for the Mario 64 tactic, go all the way with it. Don't do this half-assed bullshit. Okay, no, it's fine. Moving on. We're moving on. Moving on to a proper Mario Kart game. We have Mario Kart for the DS. This game cuts down the roster size of Double Dash in half, only having 12 racers, but it's still leagues above Super Circuit. And given the hardware limitations, I feel like we can give this one a pass. Besides, it does technically have 13 racers, if you count Shy Guy from Download Play. Okay, I do get it that it's kind of funny that if you don't own the game and you're only playing through Download Play, you get assigned the Shy Guy, but why can't he at least be a playable character? Shy Guy is a privilege, not a right. I know the reason that they did this is because if they did add Shy Guy, it was gonna leave them with an odd amount of racers. And obviously, the only way to fix that kind of problem was by putting in a random select block! At least there are 8 different colors for Shy Guy, so brings the roster up to 20. Getting on with the roster itself, it is pretty stellar. Everyone who needs to be in a Mario Kart game is here. The Mario and Wario brothers, the princesses, Donkey Kong and Bowser. Rob's inclusion in Mario Kart DS really came out of left field, but honestly, it was really fucking cool and still is. Before Mario Kart 8 included crossover characters like the Animal Crossing villagers and Link, this could be considered the first crossover racer. Alongside him making his series debut, Dry Bones. An excellent choice in my opinion for the Mario Baddies catalog. This roster is really good, but its layout is atrocious. It isn't organized by weight class, by villains, by pairs established in Double Dash. It's got nothing. I think the roster would benefit from being swapped around like this, putting all the colored Cap brothers together in the first row, then the other residents of the Mushroom Kingdom in the third row, putting the princesses below their designated brothers, which draws up some real interesting questions between Waluigi and Toad's relationship. Then finally in the bottom row, we have all the villains and one hunk of junk. Even though this game came out some time before Brawl, Rob technically was a villain in that game, so excellent chance to foreshadow Subspace Emissary. Missed opportunity. Moving back to a home console, we have Mario Kart Wii. This game opted to drop the 2-kart racer gimmick and instead tried to provide a more streamlined Mario Kart experience. And they were able to do this without taking away from the size and quality of the roster. This roster is good, but it does need a little bit of work. Basically, everyone from Mario Kart Double Dash returns in this game, except for Petey Piranha and Paratroopa. I can understand why they got rid of Paratroopa. They were ultimately replaced with Dry Bones, and that's just a way cooler inclusion, I'm sorry. But losing Petey is a damn shame. Some of my favorite Mario spin-off game characters are the ones that definitely should not be there. Like Shadow Mario and Mario Toadstool Tour, or look, we'll get there when we get there. I think Mario Kart Wii does this pretty well, with inclusions like Funky Kong and, at the time, Rosalina. Okay, in the modern-day Mario universe, Rosalina has become a mainstay, but back at the time of this game's release, Rosalina was only in one game at the time, and it was in a supporting role. I'm not saying Rosalina is a bad choice at all. She has an amazing design and perfectly fits in the heavyweight category. I'm just saying, I don't think Rosalina would become as popular as she was today if it weren't for Mario Kart Wii. I mean, it sold circles around Mario Galaxy, helping give the character way more broad-span attention than she got in her original game. Alright. Rosalina tangent's done. Let's make some changes. Let's start from the top and work our way down. God, I hate children. Alright, look, Baby Mario and Luigi were charming additions back in Double Dash when the Mario canon was so much smaller. But 4? And one of them is Baby Daisy? At least Baby Mario, Luigi, and Peach were canon characters in Yoshi's Island DS. Baby Daisy doesn't even have a social security number. Okay. I have a few options on how we can fix this. I'd keep Baby Mario and Peach to at least have a baby for each gender. Then from there I can add 2 unique lightweight characters, and I could go with EGAD and Poltergeist again, but those were chosen specifically to represent the GameCube area of the Mario franchise. I do think both of these racers still would be really cool to be reoccurring, but I'm gonna try to use this space to better represent the Wii. And after looking at my options, they're surprisingly limited. We really only have Mario Galaxy to pull from that. Mario Kart Wii came pretty early in the Wii's launch, and the only other Mario games that came out prior were Super Paper Mario, Mario Party 8, Mario Strikers, and the first Olympic Games. Wait a second. No. Easy there, Icarus. Don't fly too close to the sun. Look, I'm going to rule out the spin-off games because, while yes, they are major parts of the Mario franchise, the previous installments on the series set a precedence on focusing on mainline games. And while I'd love to put Count Black or Dimentio in the game, making Paper Racer seems like a bit of an ask. So we're gonna have to narrow our search down to Mario Galaxy again. After some careful consideration, I think Baby Daisy and Luigi should be replaced with Shy Guy and Star Bunny. After making his debut as free-to-play scum in Mario Kart DS, Shy Guy should be a legitimate playable character. Then there's Star Bunny. I know at the time they were only in Mario Galaxy and were only in a few locations in the game, but you can't tell me they wouldn't be one of the cutest racers in franchise history. Besides, they have the same amount of screen time as Rosalina. I'm going with the bunny. If they really had to think of more babies to put in the game, I'd at least prefer they swap them in with Baby Wario and Baby DK. Those are at least canon characters in the Mario franchise. From there, the only other change I'd make is swap Dry Bowser for the aforementioned Petey Piranha. I feel like Dry Bones and King Boo have the whole undead niche covered by now. After that, that, I think the roster is pretty much damn perfect. All of the characters you think of when you hear the word Mario are there in shining colors, with some additional wacky inclusions like Funky Kong, King Boo, and Star Bunny. You can't have a Mario Kart game without Star Bunny. As for the racer organization, I think it's fine as is. Of course, in the scenario where PD is back in, just scooch him next to King Boo and it's perfect. Let's move right along to Mario Kart 7, the game where Nintendo said, let's make sure the motif of this new game is making the only newcomers have scurvy. The roster size of 7 in comparison to DS is an improvement, and while this roster isn't bad, it is weird. For example, 7 saw the removal of Waluigi and Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong is especially weird since the game was partially developed by Retro Studios, the primary handlers of the Donkey Kong franchise. You'd think they'd get to show a little bit more impact on the final roster. And who were they making room for when they got rid of Diddy Kong? I'm all for random character inclusions, but the nothing characters from a total of 2 stages in the whole Mario canon? Why not pull Lubba from Mario Galaxy 2? He at least played a more prominent role in that game. And if we're really looking for a heavyweight Galaxy character, you already have Rosalina! But aside from that, Wiggler and Lakitu are fine additions. And then there's Metal Mario. Metal Mario has always kind of been a character. Well, he was a power-up in Mario 64, and he was a boss in Smash Bros. 64, and I guess he knows how to play sports? The real answer is that he's an extremely easy character to create, and Nintendo spent all their Waluigi budget on Wii, so who can really blame them? For starters, scrap the tin can and replace him with Wario, as God intended. Then from there, we can kick Queen Bee to the curb in favor of Cranky Kong. This is most definitely a weird choice, but given that Retro did help develop this game, I think Cranky could be really interesting. If Funky Kong can make it in, anyone can make it in. Oh, and then replace Koopa with Bowser Jr. Personal choice, but I just think he's a bit more interesting. Readjusting the roster a bit to put Cranky Kong and Donkey Kong together, Bowser with his son, and then put the brothers next to each other, and bada bing bada boom, perfect roster. Finally coming to the last title in the series, Mario Kart 8. Now this is a roster. Okay, so Mario Kart 8, when including DLC, not only breaks the record for having the most characters in a Mario Kart game, but also breaks the record for the most amount of changes I have to make to a Mario Kart roster. For starters, I feel like Nintendo heard my complaints from Wii about the amount of babies and my lack of understanding from another Galaxy rep from 7, and then forced the two concepts to procreate to create, bam, a continuity error. I won't get into much detail about Rosalina's backstory, but I'll cut to the gist. This doesn't work. Then they also had some weird returning characters, like Lakitu, Dry Bones, Baby Daisy, and no Baby Wario? So Mario Kart 8 is pretty infamous for having some weird choices. There are 2 pretty common complaints though. Those of course being the inclusions of the Koopalings and Pink Gold Peach. I personally don't despise Pink Gold Peach like others do, but it was a cop-out of a character. I mean, why couldn't she just be a skin? Gold Mario serves as a skin for Metal Mario. Wait a minute. So Golden Mario can be a skin for Metal Mario, but Metal Mario isn't a skin for Original Mario? Tanuki Mario isn't a skin for Mario? There are 5 Marios in this godforsaken game, and only 1 Wario? And also, the DLC packs came out with these crazy crossover characters, like Animal Crossing and Link, and you used up half of those slots on Cat Peach and Tanuki Mario? This had so much potential to bring in other characters. Like, what about a Kirby character to pay homage to the Rosalina reveal trailer? Or even maybe Olimar. That would be a real cool pick since Pikmin 3 had just released not long before Mario Kart 8. There just was so much more they could have done with this concept. Fuck it, we're removing Baby Daisy and Baby Rosalina. I'll let Baby Luigi live this time, consider it mercy. Metal Mario and Pink Gold Peach are canned as well alongside Tanuki Mario and Cat Peach. These can all be added as alternate costumes to Mario and Peach if Nintendo really feels so inclined. Then we can get rid of Lakitu and Dry Bowser. Nothing inherently wrong with these 2 characters, but with the abundance of Koopa-like characters with all the Koopalings, we really don't need these 2. Speaking of which, moving on to the Koopalings, to many people's surprise, I actually don't want to remove them from the roster. Sure, while I think they can be a bit much, they are way too prevalent in recent years, but as dumb as it sounds, I feel like their inclusion in this game really gives Mario Kart 8 some of its personality. And since I want the characters for this game to match some of the recent releases in the Mario franchise, the Koopalings make sense, given that they were the only new ones added for a while. That all being said, I've cut 6 of the main roster so far. So let's start replacing. For starters, swap out Baby Rosalina and Daisy with Baby Wario and Donkey Kong. I really don't like the idea of the babies being so prevalent, but if we're going to do it, at least pick the characters whose designs are way more interesting. If you don't like those answers, feel free to swap them with Goomba and Toadsworth respectively. Then from there, I would add Funky Kong and Petey back into the mix. With all the new legacy content coming from Mario Kart 8 through DLC, I just feel like bringing back 2 fan favorites from previous titles would be fitting. Following the same line of logic, I'd then put Diddy Kong back in to round off the Kong list. Then for the last spot, I'd like to put in a newcomer that is closely tied to the Wii U area of Mario games. And I'm honestly surprised Nabbit wasn't included from the start. He just felt like such a shoo-in for the Mario Kart game given the time. And honestly, I'd love to see him join. Now moving on over to the bottom row of crossover characters, I think Animal Crossing, Zelda, and Splatoon were all fine choices, but we didn't need duplicates of each villager and Inkling. Combine them into one character with one alternate costume each, and that opens up the floor to 2 more crossover characters. I'd say these could be really any Nintendo IP character, but ultimately, I'd like it if it was Kirby and Olimar, like mentioned earlier. I just think they would have really cool kart and course ideas that they could implement. But if those 2 aren't your preferred ones, I'm gonna leave those open as gimme spots. Then finally, to fill in the last remaining middleweight character, even though he was technically a heavyweight in Mario Kart DS, I'd really like to see Rob back again, even if it means changing up his weight class. Alright, now with all that out of the way, let's throw up the final roster.
Well, I think at this point we've all learned a little bit about something about who should drive and who shouldn't, so I'm on my way to go steal a car, cause that's what heroes do. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go play Pokemon XD for the 15th time. I'll see you guys later.